Hey guys, welcome back to Real Talk. I'm Ryan Leon, and it's another solo episode. I want to do another episode about prison because I still get a lot of questions like about Ryan. You haven't told us what prison's like, Ryan. Like how long were you there, Ryan? What did you go to jail for? So, uh, I want to answer a lot of those questions. I went to jail for. I actually got arrested a couple of times. The first time was the most embarrassing. I've talked about a little bit for flooding a brothel. If that doesn't make a lot of sense, well, welcome to my world. I flooded that brothel because uh, I was in love with a prostitute that worked there. Very embarrassing. And the second time I got arrested was uh, for stealing petrol. And I was stealing petrol because I'd lost my wallet and and I was on an island and I already hadn't eaten for 3 days at that point. So I was basically trying to survive. So, and I was in prison altogether for that crime for a total of 3 months, the shortest period that you could spend in prison there. Let me tell you what that prison was like. It's a little bit it's it's hard to tell this story, not because of the shock factor, but because okay, so when you go to spend a bit of time in prison, you have to change to survive. So you change yourself. So I still have a little bit of that mentality where, for me, it's normalized. So, um, like, you have to normalize it and survive. So that first shock period, um, once you get over that, you just have to have a lot of acceptance for your situation. It's also a little bit hard because you don't go straight to prison. You go to jail first. In Thailand, the jail is at the police station. And that's bad enough. So by the time you get to the big prison, you're already pretty hard. And, God, that's not a sexual innuendo, Ross Gear. And so you're already pretty tough. So the first like shock moment is the first time, and I was arrested a couple of times. So that very first time that you get locked up in the police station, that's probably the hardest hurdle. By the time you get to prison, I want to tell you about the process of when you get from there going into there. So, because I think when I talk to people, I get the impression that like Ryan, this is like another world for us. Like we want to visualize what you're talking about. So let me just step it through. So you're coming from the jail and the police station, which is already horrible, and I'll like do another episode on the jail in the police station because it's filthy, man. It's like being it's like being taken hostage by a gang. And so you're going from there to the prison, and they take you chained to the other prisoners that you're going there that day with, and they chain you in rusty manacles like something you would see from a movie about like slaves on a ship. These rusty, heavy iron manacles are chained around you. They're not handcuffs, they're literally manacles. And to get them on and off you, it requires a huge bolt that they have to stick your wrists and ankles into and then clamp them on with this big guillotine like press. And you're kind of, when they do that, you're thinking, I hope this, if something goes wrong, my hands and feet will literally be chopped off. It's this such a heavy machine that they put you in. So they've manacled you in that with this rusty chain that locks your wrists together like that and your feet so you can shuffle a little bit. And the chain from them to your feet. And then that chain is linked to the handcuffs, the manacles of the other person in front of you and in front of them and them. So you're like in a line. You've got to be marched anywhere you go with these other prisoners. So that's very funny. So some of this stuff is like so cartoonish. I want to tell you something that some of the stuff that makes it easier, because I think it's hard to paint a picture because there's some things about the reality are different from what you might picture from TV and movies. There's a lot of movies about prison in Thailand. I think that's what makes this so interesting. But the fact that it's so, when there's stuff like that that's so cartoony and like stereotypical and over the top, I literally did feel like that I was in a movie. It's so unreal. And so there's both a shock value and there's that. Something else that makes it easy is, look, it's both hard that you're in Thailand and kind of good because Thai people, I think it's a specific cultural mentality from the culture and the religion, but they just have a way of being upbeat in the face of anything. So when you're chained to these other prisoners, they're all local, and they got this very upbeat attitude where it's hard to be too depressed. And, so you're kind of adopting their state. Like, it's still shocking, but you're hanging out with people that are, even if you don't understand everything they're saying, they're having a laugh and being pretty accepting. So that helps too. So you're locked all together in the jail, and then they march you from there into this van. Again, pretty funny because it's like, you watch a Bugs Bunny cartoon and Bugs Bunny gets arrested and they put him in the back of that big boxy metal van with the bars on the windows. It's like that. So you feel like you're in a big Bugs Bunny cartoon. And then they drive you from the jail to the prison. So the prison I went to is on the same island. The drive there, you're in the van with your happy Thai mates that you made in jail, and you're driving through the jungle, and it's kind of, so you came to Thailand for the jungle, for that tropical happy vibe weather. You're still in the same place, so it's a bit odd. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is like the juxtaposition of the beautiful jungle, happy tropical climate that you came there for, and the fact that you're free to, and like this cartoony Bugs Bunny type thing with the manacles and the van, but also the literal taking away of your freedom and the threats of like, is there going to be a lot of raping in prison when I get there? Am I going to have to fight people? Am I going to get stabbed? So it's pretty weird. So you get to the prison, they march you out of the van, and you see the prison there, and it's literally the stereotype. It's giant concrete walls, compound with barbed wire fence on top. A big rusty metal gate at the front. They park the van there. They march you inside. When you get inside, it's a prison, so there's people that work at the prison. It's a little bit administrative. Okay, it's still a third world country, so it's not particularly fancy. But then you and the other guys you come in with, you have to get strip searched. And so in a strip search, you literally have to take off all your clothes. They look at you. They ask you to spread your cheeks to see if you're smuggling in any drugs. And then you get checked in. You move into another room where, they take your name and everything. Everything's being explained in Thai, so you don't know what's going on. And then they march you into the prison. And you're in the prison, but within this giant compound, there's other sections of the prison. For example, there's the women's part of the prison that's in a compound within the compound. There's the low, what do you call it? Minimum security prison. Now, in the minimum security, you get people with unpaid fines and things like that. Now, for a crime like mine stealing petrol, you go into the maximum security prison with all the rapists and murderers. So that was another section within the prison. So from there, you get marched into there. More giant concrete walls around that. More big rusty gates at the front that you go through. The time that I got checked in was like late afternoon. So it's into there, and then pretty much... Actually, now I come to think of it, I think that those other 11 guys that I was manacled in with, I actually didn't see them in the jail, 2 weeks in the jail cell that I spent before getting sent to the prison. I think they might have been so happy because they were only going to minimum security for unpaid fines. I went into the maximum security. It's late afternoon, so pretty much straight to the cell block in there. So in the maximum security, it's a compound. By the way, there's about 1,000 people in the maximum security prison. In there, this is a bit stereotypical. So there's a dirt courtyard in the middle of the compound. There's a few smaller buildings and sections around that. One of the buildings is a 3-story cell block. That's where you spend half of the day. From 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you get put up there into the cell, and you can come out at 6 a.m. in the next morning. So I arrive at the prison. It's already just after 4. So I get straight away taken into the cell block building. So there's 3 stories. I think I was on the 2nd floor. So you go up the stairs and then into... This is like what you see in the American movies where the guy goes into jail and he goes through the first set of bars, and you walk down this corridor with the bars on one side and people are locked in those cells on the other side. Pretty noisy because you got like 1,000 people total, so a couple of hundred people on that floor. And so on the right hand side is split up into a number of cells, and you got 40 people staying in each cell. One of the cells is a little bit bigger than this room. So I'm taken down the hall into this cell, and right away, obviously, like I said at the start, you're just waiting to find out how bad this going to be. People going to be jumping on you, trying to rape you, stab you, like whatever. So each time through this process, I'm honestly getting a little bit relieved at seeing like that it's maybe not as... Basically, no one's trying to rape me. Anything else I don't really care about. So you're going into this cell. Now, I heard, and I think this is true. No, I think that one of the stereotypes before going into prison I heard about Thailand is how packed it is and how you have to share a cell with 40 other guys. That's true. And I heard and believed that they do that basically to stop all the fighting and raping, and it works. Basically, being so packed in together forces people to get along. And when you spread them out, like in American and Australian prisons, then they will form gangs because they got space to kind of gang up and make plans and like say, I like you and I don't like you. But when you're forced together, basically everyone has to get along. So I go into this cell, and it's still pretty shit, by the way. So there's 40 people in this tiny space. Now, this is how much room you got. You're shoulder to shoulder the whole time, whether you're standing up or lying down. It's shoulder to shoulder. In fact, it's more packed than that, because not only is the floor space taken up with people, but there's two layers above that. There's half of the cell has another, it's like a giant bunk, like a little mezzanine half floor within the room. It's a little room, but it's a flat piece of wood floor. So say if there's 20 people sleeping on the floor, there's 10 people on this bit of wood that's suspended halfway up the room. They sleep on that bunk. And there's other people are sleeping in literal bunks type hammocks slung up from the ceiling about the room. So all up, this room's pretty packed. So they take me in, they designate a sleeping spot for me. It's a smack bang in the middle of the room. And you literally sleep like sardines is not a exaggeration. Can you see me? Oh, you can't really see me. But someone is shoulder to shoulder with sleeping next to you right there. And on this side, and there's someone literally touching heads. Actually, it's not like that. So someone's sleeping behind me with their head like slotted next to my head. Someone at my feet, etc. You're literally packed in as tight as you can get. The bathroom's in the cell if you need to use the bathroom, and the lights stay on all night. So, like I said, at this point, like until you've seen the whole thing and like got to meet everyone, you're basically just on the lookout. You're just trying to find out how dangerous this place is going to be, and just basically trying to adjust to your surroundings. It's pretty shocking, especially that first night. It's mainly the shock. I can't remember if I got much sleep. And then they let you out of that cell at 6 a.m. And you go down in the courtyard. And then I guess you get more of a feel of what day-to-day life is going to be like. I want to take a little detour. For me, by the time of getting into that prison, I didn't go straight from being a normal person to going into the prison. Like I said, I'd already been arrested twice for little general mischievous things, nothing major, but I had been in the jail cell a couple of times, and the biggest shock was the first time going into the jail. So what I'm saying is, like, I wasn't totally a fish out of water. I'd been hanging out with criminals and drug dealers and gangsters already outside, because I was I think wanting to have this kind of adventurous, kind of tough guy lifestyle, pretty much. So so it wasn't shocking, yes, but it wasn't too much of a hurdle. So I find out this is about the extent of the people are often ask about gangs. The extent of ganging up was that the foreigners basically would all hang out together, and we had our spot. About 12 foreigners. Every one of us, probably a little bit of a cliche. You know, when you watch those movies about prison, they're full of the cliches and stereotypes, like the Italian guy is like this and the French guy is like this. It really was like this. So there's 12. There was like the British guy, the Russian guy, the German guy, the Korean guy, the Jew, etc., etc. And I was the Aussie guy. So that was very movie-like. The guy, I just gonna say this in the acceptable way. The guy that was Jewish, by the way, literally had the most resources and could stockpile soft drink and noodles and candy and stuff like that. A coincidence, I guess. And the German was very... Here, I don't have to be careful with my words. The German was very German. The Russian guy was very Russian. The French guy was very French. And so you get to meet everyone. Now, to me, all the foreigners, I'll talk about the foreigners first. The foreigners were just like, they were not scary. I didn't ask what people were in for, and I bet that some of them were in for weird and horrible stuff that I wouldn't approve of or want to know about, but they weren't scary to be around, and they weren't idiots. Now, I kind of classify myself as an intelligent misadventurer, and I think all the guys in there were kind of the same thing. They came from mostly well-off backgrounds. They were like from other countries, obviously. I think a lot of them were there because they chose adventures. Not to say that they wanted to be... Some of them were in prison for 10, 20 years. I'm not saying that's what they chose, but I think there's a little bit of element of like, what else is there in life? You know, most of them, they had money, they had intelligence. They were okay to be around, some of them. So that was the kind of vibe. So it was, from that perspective, it was okay to get along with them. Weird, as was probably as I am and probably was at that point. One of the most interesting guys was a guy, Victor, from Nigeria. He was a proper drug smuggler. He got arrested for bringing heroin into Thailand, but very, very nice guy, because there's also an element of... This is where I think the movies and stereotypes of prison get it wrong. When you've got to live your life in prison, you adjust. For example, he was always singing hymns. He might have been a killer outside, but in prison, he just was good company. The Jew was good company as well. He was a laugh, a bit. He was what do you call it? Selfish and hoarding. Would make fun of other people. Like, I didn't have anything in there. Didn't share. But was okay to get along with. Then you got all the locals. The locals, like, it's prison, so they're in there for murder and the worst possible things. But like I said at the start, there's a general like upbeat vibe. It's a Thai thing. It's like the worst things happen to us. We don't want to mope and be sad, and also we don't want to be assholes to each other either. So there's a general goodwill in the place. So that was good to find out. The horror of the prison is that's inflicted to you by the system, the police, that especially as a foreigner, your freedom taken away, and you're not being given any rights, or like explain your rights are this, and this is the process. Because at that point, there's a belief that one, this is not a belief. One, the this is the truth. The police operate like a gang. So in Southeast Asian countries, which I spent a lot of time around and hanging out with gangs and also getting to know how the justice system works. And I think this is the same in any civilization. So it's the same for Australian, English, American systems as well. What is the police system is something that's evolved from basically the most successful gang. And that is only when you get into the criminal system of this, it only becomes much more obvious when you get into it with these third world countries, that how it's evolved from a gang that basically, how can we make money? Well, we can do it by monopolizing control of crime, selling drugs, prostitutional, that kind of thing. I won't go into all the details of the ways in which I saw that happen for time, but I did. And so what's my point? My point is, like, they don't care. At that point where they feel like in their mind they got a reason to remove your rights, like, for example, you stole petrol. There's no, like, explain to someone, yes, but my wallet, I lost my wallet and was literally starving. That at that point they will take your freedom away from you and they will ask for bribes and things like that. So the biggest pain came from being locked up in that system, basically taken hostage. Day-to-day life, it was like, this is one of the hardest things as well. Like, every day is the same, and every day after day, you just like, I would just pray that for some reason someone would come to their senses and see that I didn't believe to be hold hostage for taking 80 cents worth of petrol. And the fear that you might never get left out because they don't explain to you what's going on, and you know you're in a corrupt system. And that once you've been in there for a couple of days and you no longer live in fear of getting stabbed or raped, it's just the horror of not knowing if you ever get let out, and every day being the same, having to get locked in this cell with 40 people with the lights on, with this constant chatter in a foreign language. Blah, blah, blah. That's maddening, by the way. I heard this story when I was in there just before I went in. Now, I didn't see a lot of actual horrifying violence and stuff like that, but I think it was the Jew that told me. He said everyone understood it was maddening, but like the locals kept up such a happy, upbeat vibe. I don't know if that actually helped or made it more insane-like, because it was kind of a blocking of the reality of the truth that was going on, that you were locked in this madhouse. But it is maddening, especially that routine and getting locked up with the lights on it, crammed in that cell from 4 in the afternoon to 6 a.m. They told me that one guy tried to kill himself, and he did kill himself, and he did it by cutting his own throat during the day in the area where everyone goes to the bathroom. And I can see that, man, like, that's the real pain of it. Like how it just drives you crazy, that background noise of blah, 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 blah in a foreign language. Same routine day after day. No peace. There is not a moment of peace and quiet. I've never been to prison in Australia, but I know that you get your own room and your own bed. but I think it is more violent in the prison here. But I feel like I kind of would put up with the extra violence to get your own room and your own bed. I was only in there for 3 months, but I would go crazy thinking about the pleasure of having, even for just 10 minutes, being able to go to a room on my own, being able to lie down on a bed. I don't know if that sounds odd, but I remember how good that sounds. So it's the very basic, simple things that are taken away from you that actually create the hell and the insanity. I remember I was able to get hold of a cookie one time. This is only after being in there for a month. But I cried when I ate that cookie. Like, I could actually experience the sugar in my mouth, and I just sat there and wept. The things that deprivation does to your brain. That's making me think of this as well. I know I'm skipping forward a bit, but just to give you an idea of what the experience of that, going from being deprived of simple things like 5 minutes of peace and quiet would do. I remember when I was released, that's as traumatizing as going from that madhouse. I remember then going outside. This is so hard to explain, but it's just from going locked in that compound with like 1,000 people in this small dirt compound. Not just that, but spending more than half a day in this room with 40 people. When you get let out of there, even when it's on release into the back of the truck again, and you're still locked and manacled in the back of this police truck, but that feeling is like, it's like getting hit with a drug. It's like I literally felt euphoric, locked in the back of that police wagon when they were even though I knew, because I was not yet free, but when they release you, first off, that feels unreal. It's as terrifying as getting locked up, but that peace and quiet that you feel locked in the back of the van, even though you're being driven back to that horrible black little jail cell at the police station. It's like I experienced euphoria, man, like taking a drug. It's unreal. And now I'm getting a little bit lost in which part of the story to go to next. So I might just end it there and wait to hear from you guys. What are the bits? Please help me out by telling me, hey, Ryan, but I want to hear about this. I want to hear about this. I want to hear about this. Like I said, because in the end, it all became a bit normalized to me. I'll finish with this. People sometimes tell me, I don't believe you went to prison in Thailand. Fuck, even less likely, because of who I am now. And I can tell you, that's a good thing. Because for a brief moment, I thought, because prison does change you, even for 3 months, you got to change to survive. Even if it is just mentally, you don't have to become a killer, but just mentally. But when I come out, I thought, this is cool. Why don't I be some kind of tough guy now, because I've changed to someone who can survive prison? And let me tell you, some people don't figure out that you got to drop that when you get out of prison, because real life is not prison. You change to survive in prison because that's what you need in prison when you're not like prison. For people who don't change when they come out of prison, they're called assholes, and you do not want to be around them. It functions when you're in prison. So I feel good when people tell me now, hey, I don't believe you're in prison. You don't look like you're someone in prison. Hey, let me tell you, if I did say this to all my friends, people I hang out with, you would not bear me for 30 seconds. So I am grateful and it's been actually a long process, even though I was only locked up for 3 months. That was like 5 years ago now. It's hard to change back, and I will just leave it there. Thanks for listening. I hope this is fun for me to talk about, because it was a very exciting period of my life. I sometimes feel like if my life has any value to people at all, I've always tried to be interesting to others. I've done a lot in my life just to try to be interesting to you guys, and never felt like it was enough getting all sorts of degrees in university. You guys didn't seem to care. And then I went to prison in Thailand, and to be honest, it still feels like it's not enough. I don't know what I have to do. So I do hope that you find this interesting. Write to me and ask me some questions if you want to hear more. I'm Ryan Leon. See you next time.